Hey y'all, I'm Bud Elliott, and this is Cover 3 College Football Summer School. We've done our research on the teams, and now we're bringing on the top team experts from the 24/7 Sports Network to help us fill in the blanks. Please follow us on Twitter at Cover 3 Podcast. That's Cover 3 Podcast. And leave us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. All right, class is in session. Hey y'all, welcome back into Bud Elliott's College Football Summer School on the Cover 3 College Football Podcast. And really excited today to be talking a little Michigan State and being joined by Stephen Brooks of SpartanTailgate, our 24/7 Sports Michigan State hub. Stephen, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Bud. I appreciate it. This is going to be fun, I bet.
No doubt. So Michigan State has been a really popular topic on the show for a while. I was sort of Mr. Michigan State the last 2 years. I loved the over on their season win totals, and I thought Mel Tucker did a really fantastic job, especially evolving offensively in that first year, kind of mid-season. It was like, okay, at the start, it was like, I don't know what they have on offense, or if he's just trying to be super defense heavy. But after a while, he opened it up, and they've started to hum there. Now, power ratings wise, the Vegas power ratings didn't love them quite as much as their final record. Vegas kind of saw them more as like a top 30 or top 20 quality team. But if you go 5-0 in games that are single score in the final 4 minutes, you can overachieve that rating. Certainly. What you got to see this team every single day. What level of team do you think this thing was?
Last year, you're saying 21?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I do agree with that. That's the thing is, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But this year they're probably not going to win 11 games. I'll say that up front. I mean, they're probably more like an 8-9 win team this year. And to some people, that's going to feel disappointing. But when you zoom out and say year 3, 8 or 9 wins, that's pretty much on track of what you would have hoped to be. Last year was the outlier. That was the bizarre, unscientific year that didn't follow any of our sort of normal college football patterns. So, but yeah, to your direct point, but yeah, I mean, they won a lot of close games. As you mentioned, they came back late in some. I mean, you got to remember, this was a team, I believe their over-under was 3.5 back in August last year, maybe 4.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So you had that. They were picked dead last by the media. I wasn't one of them, at least, but I put them pretty low in my poll. They were picked dead last in the Cleveland.com media, unofficial Big Ten media poll in the Big Ten East. So, yeah, expectations were very low. And then they came out and started out 8-0, and you went, okay, well, I guess that overhit. They had one of the best players in the country, okay? And he fixed a lot of things and solved a lot of deficiencies and covered up some weaknesses. And he just was the best player on the field almost every week. So that gave them a shot. And, yeah, they beat a couple teams that, if they played 10 times, would they have won the majority? I really don't know. But, yeah, this team played a lot of close games. And it really, it played out in a way that sort of fed perfectly into Mel Tucker's program and culture when he talks about relentless and grit and fourth strain is one of his buzzwords. I mean, they come back and they I think it's like 17-3 fourth quarter and beat Miami there. 21 straight in the Peach Bowl to come back and win that game. They had to come back on Michigan. They were down 16 points. Nebraska, they had to return a punt in the last 2.5 minutes to force overtime, then win it in overtime. So, yeah, I don't want to say lucky or anything, but this was a team that definitely overachieved. Definitely squeezed everything from their roster. Kenneth Walker was Kenneth Walker. He was a bona fide star. But elsewhere, I think they squeezed a lot out of this roster. I mean, I remember I got a text the night of the Penn State game, the regular season finale, when they finished the regular season with 10 wins. And I got a text from somebody that works in the building and says, I cannot believe we just won 10 games with this roster. Just to give you sort of a sense of internally where they thought that thing was. So that's about how that went. Yeah, definitely overachievers and probably weren't as good as 11-2 looks, but you take what you get, I guess, right?
Sure, and obviously, there's no rule that says they actually could be a better quality team this year, potentially. I mean, not guaranteed to be, but have fewer wins. Yeah. I wanted to start here on offense. I felt like they did a pretty good job of playing to their strength. I had them as a top 35 offense. Stayed ahead of the chains? No. Playing pitch and catch consistently? Not really, but they just hit bombs, both in the run game and in the pass game. What do you think looks different this year? Obviously, Walker's gone. Reed's back. Jalen Naylor's gone. Can Peyton Thorne take another step here? And if so, what step do you think he takes?
That's one of the biggest questions by far this season. See, I look at it as obviously Kenneth Walker was the tip of the sword, tip of the spear, everything last year. He was your front man. I think Peyton Thorne in the passing game have to step forward into that role this year. And they're always going to want to be balanced. You know, they're never going to abandon the run game. I don't expect Michigan State to be throwing 45, 50, 55 passes unless they're down, 21 zip in the first quarter or something. But that's just not who Mel Tucker and Jay Johnson are ever going to be. So they won't ever give it up fully, but you just look at it, the strength, the experience skews to the passing game. When you have Jaden Reed back and Peyton Thorne, they've played a lot of football, but behind them, Trey Mosley is a very experienced number 2 receiver. And then they're excited about a lot of younger guys that are going to be rotating into that number 3 spot, whether it's Keon Coleman, who's a 2-sport athlete, plays basketball on the side here. Just in terms of raw athletic ability, is just one of the freakiest guys I've covered here, quite honestly. And then there's a handful of others there that are competing. Their tight ends are good. It all comes down to the offensive line on offense. And I know it's not the sexiest thing to talk about, but it's a major thing for this. It's a major concern for this program right now. So they had 7 offensive linemen healthy in the middle of spring ball. They bumped it up and got 8 for their spring game the other day. And so obviously you're not even getting your starters reps together. And even their projected starters, the guys that should be their best 5, haven't played a lot together. And they got to prove it. There's not a lot of confidence right now. They lost a bunch of guys 4 or 5 guys that combined had like 130 something starts last year. And even they weren't world beaters. They played a lot of football, but they weren't dominant on the offensive line. So now they have to replace a lot of those older guys. Question marks abound there. And so, yes, how does it look different? I mean, the offensive line, the run game, I wouldn't expect to be as fruitful. It definitely won't be a singular star-driven thing. It'll be much more by committee this year.
Yeah, I was looking at this. I'm like, I got to ask Stephen, because so for the 5 guys who played 500 plus snaps, which, if you got 5 guys that play 500 plus, you stayed fairly healthy on the year for the most part, which is, fortunate in and of itself. And one of the common threads of teams that do overachieve is health. And Phil Steele has always pointed out that Oklahoma team that won it all under Bob Stoops' second year, they played all 22 starters every single game. They didn't lose a single guy to injury, which is,
Whoa. Never
right.
Heard that. That's amazing.
So, yeah, it's sort of his starts lost to injury stat. It's kind of fun. But I was like, how much do I downgrade their offensive line? Because they are losing 4 out of 5 guys, but yet the metrics kind of hated these dudes. And it looked like Jay Johnson was sort of calling plays around some of the deficiencies of the offensive line to be able to create those explosives in spite of maybe some of the O-line problems.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And Kenneth Walker just was such a rare talent, special talent, that it didn't matter what it was blocked up for. I mean, it could have been blocked up perfectly too. I'll give him credit. And he could have just seen a lane on the outside, bounced it, and then 60 yards later, he's handing the ball to the ref. So he made up for so many mistakes just because of his unnatural in a phone booth type of wiggle stuff. But yeah, so without a guy like that could, he would have rushed for 1,200 yards behind any offensive line. Without that type of guy that can erase those mistakes, I wonder about it. So I'm looking at the running back picture. It's probably right now I would expect it to be Jalen Berger, a transfer from Wisconsin, splitting time with Jarek Broussard, a transfer from Colorado. Berger was here in the spring. Broussard gets here over the summer. And nobody said this, but my gut feels that those two are Berger was and Broussard will sort of rise to the top. But I just expect much more of a true rotation this year. And that's going to be the question. I mean, like I said, I like their weapons at receiver. They got an experienced returning quarterback. I really like their weapons at tight end on the high side there. It's just, are they going to be able to drop back protect Thorne enough for him to be that drop back guy that I talked about of taking the reins of this offense? Are they going to be able to block up anything for either of these transfer backs to get anywhere and establish some consistency? Because that's the other thing, Bud, folks. If you didn't follow this team every single week, they were extremely balanced, but a lot of the passing game numbers and just productivity came off of play action or just the simple threat of Kenneth Walker back there. I mean, they scored on like 5 flea flickers last year, okay, and that doesn't happen if you don't have a Doak Walker winner back there probably. And there were so many games early on where it was like 250 rushing, 280 passing, 275 passing, 212 rushing. They were very balanced, but a lot of that was all bled back to the running back in the ground game. And I just don't know if they'll be able to have that backbone with the line this year to hold that up. I think that's by far that's question number 1 for this team in terms of establishing their ceiling is what will that offensive line be?
And that'll be really fascinating. I know we're running a little bit long here in the offense, but it's summer. It's fun. I felt like they would have 240 on the ground, but it would be like 70, 55, 225s, and then a bunch of like 0-1, 1-1-1, 2-1-1, -4. It wasn't sort of 3 yards in a cloud of dust. We're going to run it 40 times and get 180.
Very big play dependent.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought it was actually pretty smart that they did go play action, because it just turning the hand in the ball on a success rate basis wasn't great, but the explosive rate basis was just like a cheat code. Defensively, obviously Mel Tucker's known for his great defenses. He's at Bama, he was at Georgia. I thought last year was one of his better defensive coaching jobs, because I felt like they just said, you know what, we can't cover, and we're just going to play bend but don't break and just stick to this and make you execute in the red zone, and we'll play red zone roulette, and maybe we can come out on top in the red zone. Like they were one of the most extreme teams in the country as far as their success rate split versus their explosive split. What do you see out of this defense last year? Because I was pretty impressed with what they did with the personnel they had last year.
I think you're dead on. I mean, they were handicapped by their personnel a little bit. So they had a couple corners come in, Ronald Williams from Alabama and Chester Kimbrough from Florida. They came in last summer, so they didn't get the spring ball to get immersed in the system. And they're older guys, so I mean, maybe they could have picked it up a little better. But this is a complex deal, the Scotty Hazelton system that they're running here. It's primarily a single high cover 3 deal. Shout out to the podcast, but it's also, but they're trying to mix in a lot more. And they found out about midway through camp, they almost had nobody who could play man. And so they were almost the entire year were handcuffed and couldn't play man, or at least with the regularity that you would hope to sort of be effective in mixing things up. So that's something that they're looking to fix this year. Yeah, the guys couldn't cover very well. They didn't seem to know they played slow, I thought, in the back end. They didn't seem to know what they were doing all the time with some of these half field coverages and exotic things that they tried to do. So I did think they overloaded them sometimes. I know in general, though, it was a bend but don't break philosophy, like you said, and they were opportunistic. I mean, their sack numbers were good, but there were times where they needed some pressure and they didn't get it. There were times they needed some pressure and they did, though, and they got the strip sack, they got the stop, to force a punt and 4th down. It was just an opportunistic defense more than anything. And like you said, red zone roulette, they kind of played just college quarterback roulette. Yeah. I remember the Miami games where it really hit me. It's like they just want him to snap the ball as many times as possible, because the more times they snap it, the better odds, that they always say that something bad's going to happen for the offense. Drop snap, interception, bad read, blindside hit, whatever. That was what they were doing a lot last year, and just sort of ham and egged it and pieced it all together. And like I said, but really got some timely big plays at some massive critical moments.
Absolutely. So if this defense makes the jump from top 30, top 40-ish, depending on where you look, opponent adjusted, to let's say top 15 or top 20. First of all, is that even possible? And if so, how do they get there? Where do they make that jump as far as like unit wise?
I don't know if it's tough. I guess I'd say it is possible, but that's a pretty big jump, like into that. Like that's a different tier, obviously, that top 15. Where it would be better, it would be on the back end, of course, like I mentioned. So they brought in Amir Speed this year, a 6'3" corner transfer out of Georgia. Started 3 games last year for the national champs and played in 14 or 15, might have been all of them. They're expecting him to come in and contribute right away and shore some things up there. And he's big. I mean, you see him out there on the field, he looks different. And then if you could think about pairing him with Ronald Williams, I mentioned from Alabama, he's 6'1", a long, lanky sort of dude. All of a sudden, you've got a lot of length and just physicality on the edge there. Real physically imposing duo if those are the guys. But they just got to be better at covering guys. Just straight up, as simple as that. They have to be better at covering guys. They cannot give up routine explosive plays in the passing game. So I put part of it on the back end. I put the other part on the defensive line, and just to be able to get more than timely pressure. And Hazelton, the DC, was talking to us the other day. He's like, we were up. I think they were like second national. They were up there in sacks. They were top 10 in sacks, I want to say. And he was like, yeah, but if you look at the passing yards or passing attempts against us, because they were always winning, these first quarter flea flicker touchdowns there. Michigan State was leading most of these games, or at least early. They were facing a lot of passing attempts coming back at them. So they had more, obviously, dropbacks to get sacks and everything. But that's still an area to me, like I said, when they needed it early in the year it was there. Later in the year it was not. When they needed some juice, I mean, C.J. Stroud stood back there and, knitted a quilt, and Purdue's guy was back there just having a ball, hardly got touched, and they didn't really get after Caden McNamara too well either, so they obviously won that game. So those are the 2 areas. The back end, they have to juice up the pass rush, and they've tried to address that. They hired a pass rush specialist in Brandon Jordan to the on-field staff. It's kind of an interesting move this offseason, and that's an area where I think I want to see what type of immediate effect he has, and I'm seeing the recruiting effect for sure, but that's an area they could really use some juices on the pass rush.
And to your point, I just looked this up here in our little CBS stats portal. They were actually 40 spots worse in pressure rate than they were in sack rate. So like they would get some guys on the ground, but that to me suggests like a lot of downs where the guy was not, or was pretty comfortable. They converted pressure into sacks highly, but they didn't have pressure. Maybe, I mean, 81st is probably not what you want.
Yeah, no, it wasn't consistent. Like I said, it was timely, like big, when they needed it, something they pulled off a lot of like storybook type of plays last year, and that was fine. It worked, but consistently game in, game out, possession to possession, especially second half of the year, it just wasn't up to par, I don't think.
No doubt. Stephen Brooks, Spartan Tailgate, does a tremendous job for us at 24/7 Sports covering Michigan State. I really appreciate it. I feel like I learned a lot, and I look forward to reading more Spartan Tailgate over the summer.
Good. Hopefully any of that made sense. Sounds like maybe it did, so I appreciate it, Bud. I hope you have a good summer, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm happy to do this anytime.
You too. We'll have to do it again this fall. Take care. All right, that's the bell. Cover 3 College Football Summer School is over for today, but don't worry. We'll be back soon with even more episodes filling you in on the top teams in college football. Please give us those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on YouTube and on Twitter at Cover 3 Podcast, and we'll see you all soon.